Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for checking out Conducting Perspectives Episode 5 with myself, Lt Michael Flynn from the United States Air Force Band of the West, stationed in San Antonio, Texas. Hope you're doing great. Hello to Julie. Say hello. So glad that you're joining us. If you're joining us for the first time, go ahead and put it up in the comment section. Let us know where you're watching from and how you're staying safe during this time. Hope you're doing great. And if you're returning as a return visitor, go ahead and post that in there too and let us know where you're joining us from. So I'm Lt Michael Flynn with the United States Air Force Band of the West, which you can see in the logo. So that side. And based out of San Antonio, Texas, we're going to be talking about Chorale and Shaker Dance by Jon Zeklich today. So today we're going to be doing this Conducting Perspectives, a little bit about score study, a little bit about programming, and we're going to be going into a couple of the questions and comments that you've sent to me at the email address, which you can see underneath there, conductingquestions@gmail.com. If you're really interested in a specific piece that you'd like for me to discuss, go ahead and write into me at that email as well and say, oh, what about this piece? I've always wanted to know more about it. This is the opportunity for you to interact with me and for us to interact with you and tell you a little bit about how we program this music. So this is episode 5. The previous 4 episodes will be available for your viewing pleasure on the Band of the West Facebook page. Be sure to check us out and follow for great content. Everything that we're doing is focused around connecting with our community. So hopefully you enjoy this one about Jon Zeklich's Chorale and Shaker Dance. So we're going to be talking about this today. All right, Pennsylvania, fantastic. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Here is the outline of what we're going to be talking about today in terms of this particular piece of music. If you're joining us for the first time, we talk about the pieces of music in terms of a conductor's perspective, so my own perspective, looking at how I'm going to be conducting the band for this piece. Also be looking at it from your perspective. Even if you're not a conductor or even a musician, we give you some nice things to think about in terms of how we produce a program, how we choose these pieces, and how as musicians and conductors we move through this music and rehearse it along the way. So today we're going to be talking about programming of a tune. We're going to be talking about the score, so talking about elements about this particular score. Talking about score markings, the way that we mark things in there. Hello from Cape Cod, Margaret Flynn. Thanks for always checking us out, faithful follower there. We're going to be talking about rehearsal strategies. There's a couple of rehearsal strategies in this particular piece that I'll talk about that really made a big difference in my life as a player, playing this piece for the first time, and some conducting ideas. So as I'm conducting through it, maybe if you're a conductor, you're checking this out and you're saying, wow, I wonder how that would go. Or even if you're a audience member, like a consumer of this product, and you're wondering about how musicians think about this music and how it's working out. Why do they make these decisions? We're going to be talking about that as well today. So again, if you're just joining us, I am Lt Michael Flynn with the United States Air Force Band of the West, based in San Antonio, Texas, and we're going to be talking about Chorale and Shaker Dance by Jon Zeklich today. So first thing we're going to be talking about is programming of a tune. So when you talk about programming of a tune, this particular one is one that you would probably recognize. So if you go to a concert and you say, oh, I wonder what they're going to be playing, this would be one that you could actually hum along to, something that you could relate to as a consumer of this particular piece. And it's actually, the piece is based on a tune called Simple Gifts. So the one that goes dun 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 dun, perhaps you've heard it or you recognize it and say, oh, I know that one. So why do we program pieces that, if you are an everyday consumer of the music, not necessarily a musician or a conductor, why do you program this stuff? And for myself, and we're going to be talking about this a lot next week in the Conducting Perspectives episode 6, when we talk about programming and why we program everything, programming a concert. But a huge element of this particular idea, programming the tune, is having something that is recognizable to the audience. Something that my parents always ask, and whenever I say, oh, I'm doing this concert, I'm programming this concert, are you playing anything we know? And usually we say, oh yes, you might recognize this one. And that's a really big deal, so that the audience member knows that when they get to this concert, they're going to hear something that they can recognize, and they can feel like they're have a part in the concert. They have a way to interact with the musicians. They say, well, they're playing that beautiful music. I'm not a musician, but I know that piece and I can relate to that, which is really, really important. It's the parents factor, the mom and dad factor, and how do we engage the audience in what we're performing. So this piece is a really great example of it. As you can see in the music, it's up on the screen, in the trombone part, the notes there, it says TBN. That's going to be for trombone. It's bum 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 bum. As you can tell, I'm a trained vocalist, obviously, and I'm not, but I enjoy singing all of the lines as I study, and you might recognize that tune. Great thing about this particular piece is that the tune itself isn't provided in its entirety until the very end. So the audience member hears little portions of it all along the way, and then at the very end they play it all together, and it's fantastic. So using something like this is a really, really great way to engage the audience and help them understand a little bit about the music that you're presenting. Say, oh, well, I recognize that. You feel like you can be involved, which is fantastic. So go ahead in that comment section, and if you recognize that tune, let us know. And if you know anything about the music, and say, oh, I really like it when they play something that I can hum along to or sing along to, let us know in the comment section. It'll allow us to interact a little bit and connect with you a little bit better, even across this video stream. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is a little bit about the score. So again, these scores, they come to us and we're the conductors, and they're just like books that has text in it that you might read, like a novel that you might read. Now the words in here are going to be the musical notes, but they still come in a book format. This particular one is in a very specific type of translation for the type of music. It's a score in C. So if you're a conductor, you already know what this means. That means that this piece is actually a rarity. Usually they have pieces that are transposed. This one is like if you were playing it on the piano, you could just play all the notes. This is like written for piano. Now if you're a trumpet player, your instrument is a different type of size. You couldn't play directly off of this score. And that's important to know as a conductor. So if you're a conductor out there and wondering how we relate to that in terms of the score, this particular one is in C. And it's really handy because it actually says in C on the top of the score. So Margaret Flynn, yes, it's fantastic to listen to a piece we recognize. Absolutely, absolutely. And any of the other viewers out there, go ahead and comment in there and let us know if you like hearing something you recognize, or if you like hearing all brand new music. Maybe you like going to the concert and not recognizing anything. Let us know what you think. Thanks a lot for the feedback as well. So this particular piece, also on the top corner of it, it says grade 4. So grade 4 is going to be our high school grade students. So in terms of grade, musical grades is terms of it's not necessarily grade like 4th graders would play this, but it's in terms of difficulty rating, and this particular one is kind of a high school, college rating of a piece. So in this particular score, we also have things called block scoring. Now, even if you're not a musician and you just look at colors, or I guess in this case, black marks on a page, you can hear or see with your eyes what block scoring means. So what block scoring is that there's big chunks of instruments playing all the same thing at all the same time. So in the example that's up on the screen right here, you can see in the very top part of it, if you look at the black notation, it all looks very similar all the way across the board. And then underneath that, you have those 2 circles that have like a smiley face underneath them, and those are connected too. You can see that. And then a little bit down further, you can see in the alto saxophone portion there that there's another section where the music all looks similar. So in terms of block scoring, this is a characteristic that is very used readily in this piece. And so what that means is that when you have sections of the ensemble, like all of the woodwinds, so like flutes, clarinets, and oboes, they all kind of play all at the same time. If you have the brass, it's like trumpet and trombone and tuba, French horn, they're also playing at the same time. So that's a really good thing, because if you have somebody who's not quite sure of their part, there's lots of other people around them. There's not tons of independence. That's the pro of this. The con of it is on the right side of the page. So the right side of your screen, you see a thing that says trombone or TPT, trumpet TPT, trombone TBN, baritone, that kind of thing. When you look at that, You see that there's tons of space on that page. You see the musical notes are on there and then tons of space. So although all of those instruments are playing together, they're actually all having to play with tons of space around them, which is really, really difficult. So there's lots of places to mess up, which is another way to think about it. So when there's tons of space on your score, it just means that it's difficult for the players to play because everyone is doing the same thing at the same time with lots of space around it, which makes it very hard for some of the players along the way. Speaking of the players of this piece, another thing that makes it really difficult is terms of soloists. So soloists is when the instrumentalist is going to be playing by themselves. So in this case, you have a flute and a piccolo, clarinet, oboe, alto saxophone, tenor saxophone, trumpet, French horn, trombone, and percussion all have things where they have to play independently of everyone else. Now you might say, oh, that's not really a big deal. However, if you think of anything that you've done in your life where you had to do it all by yourself in front of everyone, where everyone was listening or watching your performance, perhaps that made you feel really nervous or maybe anxious, maybe didn't like that. You think about, oh, you went on a golf course and you were playing on the first tee and there were 10 people watching you. All of a sudden, this is the hardest thing to do in the world. And that actually makes it difficult for musicians as well. In this case, all of these musicians have solos, and so they play by themselves. So I did this piece when I was in Wyoming. And welcome, Nicole. So nice to see you. Thanks for joining. And when I was doing this piece in Wyoming, we had strong players in every one of these categories. And so it was actually an easy piece to put together because those strong players were the soloists who were leading the way. Now, if you had certain, like half of these players, the task would become much more difficult because not everybody would be comfortable playing all by themselves. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that more in the rehearsal considerations. And when you talk about soloists and rehearsal considerations, you want to talk to the soloist first. Say, listen, I know that you're really anxious about this, but these 6 bars are all by yourself. By the way, we're going to practice these in 2 weeks. Let me know if you need any help. Or, oh, here's some recordings that might help you. That kind of idea. So I have that under rehearsal considerations in the soloist so that people aren't caught off guard. At the very beginning of the piece, there's lots of soloists as well. So there's tenor saxophone, trumpet, horn, and baritone who play solos in the first 10 bars of the piece. Now, if you're a player and you get this new piece of music, you might be really excited to play it, but not really excited to try it for the first time in front of everybody else. So with this piece, again, you talk about block scoring. There's a lot of stuff where everyone plays together. So you don't necessarily have to do the stuff that you have the soloists play by themselves from the very first rehearsal. Another couple of rehearsal considerations have to do with the notation and the 1970s rhythm. So I remember playing this piece with Frank Ticheli when I was in high school. And Frank Ticheli is a really famous conductor. He's a little bit older. And he comes from a generation of music where specific items were characteristic of these band pieces. And one of those pieces is something that you see in this piece, as you can see in here, which is the example on the left and the right. The example on the left is from the score. An example is on the right is from the actual trumpet part that I played when I was playing this with Battisti when he was conducting this. So it's the part that goes da 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 da. So if you played a piece from the 1960s and 1970s in the band repertoire, this would be commonplace. You'd play this all the time. So I remember going into this rehearsal and seeing this music for the first time, and he's all kinds of upset. Why is nobody playing this? This piece exists in all kinds of band music. And I was in high school and I had never seen it before, and neither had anybody else. So if you decide to do a piece like this, make sure that you familiarize yourself with what might not be common knowledge in the repertoire currently. So what Battisti was thinking was, he was thinking, oh, well, they must have played this all growing up. I had never played it. Because during the time I was in high school, this rhythm wasn't commonplace in any type of high school band repertoire. It just didn't exist. Also over here on the right, you see in the actual trumpet part where it says, you can see the rehearsal letter Q. Now those are markings so that we can say, oh, start at Q. It's a starting location for the rehearsal. So at this particular point, I'm looking at this, and after Q, there was this slash and these 2 dots, and I also didn't know what that means. So we were trucking along on this piece, so we got to this piece, and we all stopped playing. And he didn't like that either. He was very upset about this. Why did you all stop? I don't understand. And we had something in the music that we had never seen before. We didn't know what it meant. And this is another thing that was really, really common in the 1960s and 1970s, that when I was in high school, nobody knew what this meant because it was not being used in repertoire. So with pieces like this, keep those things in mind with your students. Maybe they've never seen it before. Maybe they need a little bit of heads up and, hey, this was used 30 years ago, 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Now, this is what it means. So that might be something else that will help with your rehearsal process. Another thing to think about is playing what's on the page and not how you think it goes. So in this particular piece, I know how Simple Gifts goes, but the problem is the whole tune doesn't come back until the very end of the piece. So if you're a student and you're playing through this and you know it goes da 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 da, it's great. But a lot of times this particular piece, they alter that theme. So in other words, they create variations of it that aren't exactly what you think it is or how you think it goes. So those are just elements that you can certainly think about when you're doing this piece. So if you're just joining us, welcome. Hopefully you're enjoying this live stream. Let us know in the comments section if you enjoy the concerts that the United States Air Force bands have been putting on, or if you can relate to any of these ideas that I'm talking about. If you're a musician, maybe if Nicole is still there, she has some input about, oh, I didn't know what that was either until I was older. Or maybe you knew what that was the whole time because you had played music with little slashes and dots in it. But let us know what you think, and let us know if you have any questions or comments. It's conductingquestions@gmail.com. I got lots of questions last week. Go ahead and put your questions into that conductingquestions@gmail.com as well. Again, this is Lt Michael Flynn from the United States Air Force Band of the West. When we're talking about conducting ideas, we're going to be taking apart a little portion of this. This is just, it's the rehearsal section from A to C in this piece. And I've put in a couple of things here, as you can see on the page right in front of you. So we've got some woodwinds playing, we've got some clarinets playing, you've got a thing down the bottom that looks like a triangle, you've got RITs with dots, you've got railroad tracks or two lines going down, you've got horns coming, you have flutes, clarinets. There's a lot of stuff going on in this particular section of this piece. And I'm going to be talking about a little bit how you might approach this particular section and how it could actually go, how it actually goes and transfers into your rehearsal technique. Margaret Flynn asked a really great question. What do the little slashes and dots mean? I did not actually let you know what it meant. It means that the measure before is going to be repeated over and over and over again. So if you look back here right at rehearsal cue, you've got something in the bar before cue. If you're a musician, you might know what that means. If you're not, you're looking at a couple of notes with some rests in there. And at cue, you've got those two slashes and two dots. So rather one slash and two dots. That means you just continue to repeat the measure before cue over and over and over again until the little slash, the two dots, goes away. So in this case, you'd be doing this 4 times total, which is what the little numbers mean over those bars. Excellent question. Okay, so back to conducting ideas. You've got a couple of things here to deal with, and you've got 2 hands and your face, of course, do your motions. And up on the bottom of this screen up here, you can see that I've written in a triangle with a little X and a little note. So this particular piece has a really long score, and so the triangle happens way down at the bottom, and all of the other stuff happens at the top. So I draw in the triangle part ahead of time so my eyes don't have to go quite as far. So here you've got a couple of things. You've got tempo, quarter equals 92. That means that there's 92 beats per minute. And then you've got some entrances and some dynamic markings, and you've got some ritardando, which means go a little bit slower. And then you've got a fermata, which is the little half circle thing with a dot on it, which means you hold on to it for a little bit longer. And then you've got 2 vertical lines, or I guess diagonal lines. That means stop this sound. So at the very beginning, we're going to be dealing with a couple of different things. One of which is that all of the people who are playing, which is flutes and clarinets, are right in front of you as the conductor. So you're looking at the ensemble, and everyone is very, very close to you. Whereas the triangle player is probably 30 or 40 feet in the back of the ensemble standing up. So here, I might go ahead and use my right hand to conduct all of the woodwinds in front of me, and then use my left hand to cue the percussion. I'm actually going to do that again, the bar after beat. So at this very start of this piece, this particular part of the piece is going to be something you'll recognize as well. And it starts at A, and it goes ba da 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 da. So it's something that you kind of recognize as it goes. So at the very start of it, I'll use my right hand for the flutes and the clarinets and the triangle for the top. So it might look something like this. B da 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 da, and then it slows down here, dum bum B, and you've got a fermata. So as a conductor, you have to decide how that note is going to finish. Now this particular one, it has a ritardando and has a kind of a gentle, soft ending, like a silky, soft ending. So I don't want the cutoff to be really abrupt. I want to have it have a little bit of release and resonance to it. So the last bar before B might go E, dom, B, and then you release it up. Now you've got something interesting. The next part is that where the brass comes in at B. I would release that and then have the release be the breath for the brass and transition to a little bit later, longer, further away, not later, but further away in the ensemble. So the first 4 bars are all going to be right in front of me, and then a release here, and then transitioning to the brass where they're going to be coming in with the next section at letter B. So the bar before B might look something like this. D, dom, B, and then my release is going to be the same as the breath for the brass. Release, and then brass. D, dom, B. So at letter B, you've got a fermata that the note in the brass holds into the woodwinds. So what I'm going to do is keep the fermata hold in my left hand and then start the woodwinds with my right hand as we go through it. So at B, you have B, bom, B, there's all the low brass there, and then starting the bar after B, bom, ba, da, dee, da, ba, dum, B, okay? So 2 bars after B, the third bar of B, where all those notes kind of spread out and it's all long, I'm going to actually cue in the bells to play there as well. So basically what I'm thinking at B is brass, 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 hold here, and then woodwinds, dum, ba, and then my left hand transitions to the bells, they come in there. So I'm actually thinking about moving this around. So we've got some ideas about style, release, and dynamics. So location and percussion we talked about too. You have the woodwinds right in front of you, and you've got the brass and percussion a little bit further away from you. In terms of markings, we talked about the triangle being in there. CL is my abbreviation for clarinet. That's why I mark those in there as well. So in terms of time, we've got some very specific time markings for the composer. Right at A, it says odd tempo at 92. And then B, it's rubato, which is a little bit more freely and broadly, as even it says in the brass down there. You've got something that says quarter note equals about 84. So in this case, I would use my cell phone where I have a tonal energy app, and I would go ahead and click my time. As a conductor, I want to make sure that my time is really close to what the conductor wants. So if it's 92, there's a little app you can get with your metronome where you can tap the beat that you want and make sure that it's close to 92 as you go. The trick part here is transitioning from 92 to 84. So 92 to 84 happens between, I guess, the fermata right before B and then starting at B. So if I was practicing this and having this as an etude in time, I would want to make sure that I could tap the tempo of 92 and then stop and then start with 84 and get close to those tempo markings. I'd do that over and over and over again until I could tap it, and then I would put the movement into it. So just like anything else, when you're adding complexity, you have to have a much firmer grasp of the time. So I'd make sure I had the grasp of the time first before moving anything with my hands to create any complexity with that particular piece. So with that particular release. So I tap along first, then release, then tap to 84, make sure that was correct, then think about where I was moving all of the parts in terms of the cues. Okay, so a couple other things is that we have some dynamics in here. Right at letter B, you have in the brass, this broadly B, da, D, and then they play a little bit softer. I already talked a little bit about how you maintain that sustain with the left hand, but you can actually get them to play softer by just turning this over and not giving a release. So you have B, dom, B, just a little bit less. And then you continue, dom, ba, da, dee, da, ba, dom, B. So a lot of that would be something that I would practice. And we talked a little bit about, in the last episode, about why you do practice. Treat it as if you're holding your trumpet and you're trying to play an etude. You never just try and play it all the way through. Or maybe you do the first time and then you realize like, oh, I need to practice these parts. And then you find out the transitions that are difficult for you. Then you take actually a little magnifying glass and figure out how to fix those specific areas. This is one of those areas in this piece in terms of what you are doing in terms of your practice. So create little etudes for yourself. Create little ways that you can practice it on your own, on a loop. You know, I'd practice the 92 to 84 over and over and over again. And this is just 6 bars out of this piece that's hundreds of measures long. So you find these sections and then you learn how to practice it by practicing efficiently. And we talked about that actually in the last episode as well. So hopefully that gives you an idea about how this piece moves in terms of conducting. I would treat almost all of the transitions here the same way. So I'd examine them, I'd look at the markings, I'd look at the time, I'd look at the style, the release, the dynamics, location of where the cues might be, and what the percussion might be doing, especially if they're disconnected from the rest of the ensemble. In this case, what I mean by that is that the whole top part of the music has got woodwinds, and then down at the very, very bottom, there's one percussionist playing. So keep in mind of all those things. So as you're thinking about these conducting ideas and conducting examples, go ahead and send me your questions, which you can send to conductingquestions@gmail.com. And hopefully you will be able to come up with some ideas about why did you decide to do this, or maybe I'd really like for you to take a look at this particular piece. I really like it. Or maybe you really like band music with marches and you take a look at that. Oh, what about the Stars and Stripes Forever? When can we take a look at that one? Absolutely happy to do so. And again, that's how we connect with the community here, is by talking through those items with you. And this particular piece is a result of conversations that I've had through email and through Facebook Messenger about pieces that individuals would like to see me take a look at. So hopefully you enjoyed this segment on a piece that was selected by the people who are viewing this video. So thanks very much, and if you have questions or comments, please send them to conductingquestions@gmail.com. I've been getting a ton of requests about pieces to take a look at, conducting concepts, if you'd like to deal with any type of movement of this. You'll be able to have a wonderful wealth of information. So speaking of wealth of information, I'd like to address Angela Skipping's question about where do I direct flute specific questions. We would be happy to talk to you about that. If you email your questions to the one in conductingquestions@gmail.com, I'll put you in touch with the flute players here at the Band of the West to answer your questions. Also, there's going to be a video series coming up where it's going to be a series of master classes featuring the members of the Band of the West talking about music that you can actually play along with and actually have a master class interaction with them on those pieces. So happy to do that as well. So if you send those questions to conductingquestions@gmail.com, I can direct you to the right person to find those answers as well. So hopefully you enjoyed this segment. Next Monday at 3 o'clock, we're going to be talking about programming for concert programming. How do we look up what we're doing? How do we decide? How does the director decide which kind of pieces to do, what kind of music to choose, and what type of music to do in what kind of venue? So hopefully you enjoyed this. Thanks a lot for checking out the stream. If you have questions and you're watching this on repeat, feel free to send those questions to conductingquestions@gmail.com, or even suggestions for pieces or concepts that you'd like to have me talk about in this series. I've had a wonderful response so far, and it's a wonderful way to connect with our audience here, even though we can't be in the same location in person. So hopefully you enjoy this. Again, this is Lt Michael Flynn with the United States Air Force Band of the West, based out of San Antonio, Texas. And take care. We'll see you next Monday at 3 p.m. Central.